Hello and welcome to the English Globe podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we're so excited to have you here. This podcast is all about helping you learn English in the most fun, practical, and effective way possible. Whether you're just starting out on your English learning journey or you've been working on improving your skills for a while, we've got something here for everyone. I'm Adam, and I'm thrilled to be your guide as we tackle the challenges and celebrate the victories of learning English together.
And I'm Julia. We're so glad you're here because today's topic is incredibly important for anyone learning English, no matter where they are in their journey. We're going to talk about the top 10 mistakes to avoid when learning English in 2025. These are mistakes that so many people make without even realizing it, and they can really slow down your progress or even make you feel like giving up. If you're a beginner, this episode is perfect for you because it will help you build strong foundations. And if you're more advanced, you'll still find valuable tips to refine your approach and avoid falling into bad habits.
That's right, Julia. Learning a new language, especially one as widespread and complex as English, can be an exciting yet challenging experience. The journey can sometimes feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. By understanding the common mistakes learners make and knowing how to avoid them, you can save yourself a lot of time, frustration, and energy. And trust me, when you approach learning the right way, it becomes not only more effective, but also a lot more enjoyable and fulfilling.
Exactly, Adam. This episode is all about giving you the tools you need to make real, consistent progress. We're here to help you not just learn English, but also enjoy the process of learning. After all, when you're having fun and feeling confident, you're much more likely to stick with it and reach your goals. You know, Adam, one of the biggest reasons we decided to focus on this topic is that so many English learners, especially beginners, find themselves stuck or frustrated because they unknowingly make these common mistakes. For example, they might spend too much time on certain aspects of the language while completely ignoring others, or they may not know how to structure their learning in a way that works for them. These mistakes can create unnecessary barriers and make the entire process feel a lot harder than it actually is.
You're absolutely right, Julia. Learning a language is like building a house. You need a strong foundation to support everything else. If you start off with bad habits or poor strategies, it can feel like you're working twice as hard and still not seeing the results you want. But when you understand what these pitfalls are and how to avoid them, you can make steady, meaningful progress without burning yourself out.
Exactly, and the good news is that these mistakes are completely avoidable once you're aware of them. Our goal today is to shine a light on these common traps and give you practical, easy-to-follow advice on how to steer clear of them. When you know what to focus on and how to approach learning in a smart and efficient way, the whole process becomes so much more rewarding.
And that's what we want for you, to enjoy learning English and to feel confident in your ability to communicate. We know it's not always easy, but it's absolutely worth it. So stick with us as we break down the top 10 mistakes to avoid and share tips to help you stay on the right path. Trust me, you don't want to miss this.
By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear understanding of what to watch out for, what to focus on, and how to keep your learning journey both effective and enjoyable. So, let's dive right in.
All right, let's dive into the first mistake, and it's one that I think most English learners have made at some point: focusing only on grammar. Now, this might seem like the logical way to learn English because grammar gives structure to the language. After all, without grammar, sentences would just be a random jumble of words, right? But here's the issue. Many learners think that mastering grammar is the key to fluency, and they end up dedicating most, if not all, of their time to studying rules, memorizing verb conjugations, and completing endless exercises from grammar books. While grammar is definitely important and plays a crucial role in building a strong foundation, it's not the whole picture. Learning a language is about communication, and communication involves so much more than just getting the rules right. You could have perfect grammar but still struggle to express yourself because you haven't spent enough time developing other skills like listening, speaking, reading, or even writing. And that's where the problem lies. Focusing solely on grammar creates an imbalance in your learning process, which can hold you back in the long run.
You're absolutely right, Adam. And I think this issue is so common because of how most people are taught languages, especially in traditional school settings. Think about it. When we learn English, or any other language, in school, the focus is almost always on grammar. Teachers drill rules into students, hand out worksheets, and expect them to memorize everything from past perfect to conditional clauses. But what happens when these students are faced with real-life situations, like ordering food at a restaurant or having a casual conversation with a friend? They freeze up because they haven't practiced the actual use of the language. It's like trying to learn how to swim by only reading about swimming techniques. You might understand the theory, but the moment you step into the water, you'll feel lost. Grammar, while essential, is just one piece of the puzzle. If you focus all your energy on it, you miss out on the opportunities to develop the confidence and fluency you need to truly communicate in English. So, what's the solution to this very common mistake? Well, the key lies in finding a balance. Yes, grammar is important. It helps you build correct sentences and express yourself clearly. But it's just one of the many skills you need to develop. You also need to focus on improving your listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. These are the tools that will help you actually use the grammar you've learned. For example, instead of spending an entire week just studying past tense rules, try incorporating that grammar into other activities. You could watch a short video or listen to a podcast and pay attention to how native speakers use the past tense. Then, practice using it yourself. Maybe write a short story about what you did last weekend, or have a conversation with a language partner. The more you actively apply what you're learning, the better you'll understand how grammar works in real-life situations. And the best part? This approach makes learning more engaging and less stressful. When you focus on using English instead of just studying it, you start to see real progress, and that's incredibly motivating.
That's such an important point, Julia. When you balance grammar study with practical use, you're not just learning the rules, you're building your confidence and developing a deeper understanding of the language. I've seen so many learners who spent years studying grammar but avoided speaking because they were afraid of making mistakes. The irony is that you learn grammar faster and more effectively by actually using the language. So, my advice to anyone listening is this: don't let the fear of making mistakes stop you from speaking or writing. Mistakes are a natural part of the learning process, and every mistake you make is an opportunity to improve. Focus on communication first and accuracy second. Over time, the grammar will start to fall into place naturally.
And one last thing to remember, native speakers don't always use perfect grammar. And that's okay. The goal isn't to sound like a grammar textbook, it's to be understood and to connect with others. So if you're someone who's been spending hours every day on grammar exercises and not much else, take a step back and reassess your approach. Start incorporating activities that help you practice all aspects of the language, and you'll find that your overall fluency improves much faster. It's all about finding that balance and enjoying the process.
Exactly. Language learning should be an exciting and rewarding experience, not a chore. So remember, grammar is important, but it's not everything. Focus on using the language as much as you study it, and you'll see incredible results. All right, let's move on to the next mistake, which is one that ties in closely with what we've just talked about: not speaking enough.
Let's move on to mistake number 2, which is a major hurdle for many learners: not speaking enough. This is one of the biggest reasons people struggle to make progress in their language journey. When you're learning a new language, especially English, it's so easy to focus on passive activities like reading books, watching videos, or listening to podcasts. While these are all important, they don't give you the practice you need to actively use the language. Speaking is such a crucial part of language learning because it forces you to think on your feet, form sentences in real time, and communicate your thoughts. It's also the skill that most learners want to improve, so why not focus on it from the very beginning? I know that for many people, the idea of speaking English can feel intimidating, especially if they're beginners. They might think, what if I say something wrong? Or what if people don't understand me? But here's the truth. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. Speaking from day one, even if it's just a few simple sentences, is one of the best ways to develop your fluency. It helps you get used to the rhythm and flow of the language and builds your confidence. Think about it. Babies don't learn to speak by memorizing grammar rules. They learn by imitating, experimenting, and practicing, and that's exactly what you should do.
That's such a great point, Julia. And I completely agree. Speaking should be a priority from the very start. One of the biggest challenges I've noticed is that learners often wait until they feel ready to start speaking. But here's the thing. You'll never feel completely ready. Waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect level of fluency before you start speaking is like waiting for the perfect weather to go outside. It's better to just start now, even if it feels awkward or uncomfortable at first. The sooner you start, the sooner you'll improve. And let's be honest, everyone feels nervous when they start speaking a new language. It's part of the process, and it's completely normal. Now, I know some of you listening might be wondering, how do I practice speaking if I don't have anyone to talk to? Well, the good news is that there are so many options available today. For starters, you can find a language partner online. There are tons of platforms and apps where you can connect with native speakers or other learners who want to practice. And if you're not ready to speak with someone else, you can start by practicing with yourself. Yes, you heard me right. Talk to yourself in English. Describe your day, talk about your plans, or even pretend you're having a conversation with someone. It might feel silly at first, but it's an excellent way to get comfortable with forming sentences and hearing yourself speak in English.
That's such a great suggestion, Adam. And one more thing I'd like to add. Don't be afraid to make speaking a regular part of your daily routine. Even if you only have 5 or 10 minutes, use that time to say something out loud in English. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel, and the faster you'll improve. Remember, speaking isn't about being perfect. It's about communication. Focus on expressing your thoughts, not on avoiding mistakes. And that brings us to mistake number 3, which is directly connected to this topic, the fear of making mistakes.
This is such a big one, and I think it's something every learner struggles with at some point. The fear of making mistakes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I'm afraid to speak because I might get it wrong. But here's the thing. Mistakes are part of the process. In fact, they're not just a part of it. They're essential to it. Think about how you learned your first language as a child. You made mistakes all the time, but you didn't stop trying. You kept going, and eventually, you got better. The same principle applies to learning English. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn and improve. Here's another way to think about it. When you make a mistake, it means you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and that's where real learning happens. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. Mistakes are a sign that you're actively engaging with the language and trying to use it in real-world situations, which is exactly what you should be doing. So, instead of fearing mistakes, try to see them as stepping stones on your journey to fluency.
Absolutely, Adam. And I think it's so important to shift your mindset about mistakes. Instead of thinking of them as failures, see them as opportunities for growth. And here's a tip. Start small. If you're nervous about speaking, begin with short, simple sentences. Practice introducing yourself, talking about your favorite hobbies, or describing your day. These small steps will help you build confidence without feeling overwhelmed. As you get more comfortable, you can gradually challenge yourself with longer conversations or more complex topics. Another great way to overcome the fear of making mistakes is to focus on progress, not perfection. Celebrate the fact that you're trying, even if it doesn't go perfectly. Remember, everyone who speaks English fluently now was once a beginner just like you. They made mistakes, learned from them, and kept going. You can do the same. And don't forget, native speakers are usually very understanding and encouraging when they see someone making an effort to learn their language. They're not judging you, they're rooting for you.
That's such an important reminder, Julia. And one last thing. Practice self-compassion. Learning a language is challenging, and it's okay to have moments where you feel frustrated or unsure. The key is to keep going and to remind yourself why you started in the first place. If you can embrace your mistakes and use them as learning opportunities, you'll not only improve faster, but also enjoy the process so much more. So, to everyone listening, don't let the fear of mistakes hold you back. Speak up, try your best, and remember, you're doing great.
Now let's move on to mistake number 4. Overloading vocabulary. I see this all the time with learners, especially beginners. They feel like they need to memorize as many words as possible, and they try to learn huge lists of vocabulary in one go. While it might feel productive in the moment, this approach is actually not very effective. You might memorize dozens, even hundreds of words, but if you don't use them in context, they'll quickly slip away from your memory. Imagine you're learning English and you decide to study a list of 50 random words in one sitting. At first they seem to stick, but then when you try to use them in conversation or writing, they don't come to mind as easily. Why? Because those words didn't have any real connection to your everyday life or experiences. When you learn words out of context, they don't feel meaningful or useful, which makes it harder to recall them when you need them. Learning vocabulary in isolation might help you in the short term, but it's not going to help you become fluent in the long run. So, what's the solution here? How can we make vocabulary learning more effective?
That's such a great point, Julia. What you're describing is what many learners fall into, and it's a very natural thing to do. We see vocabulary lists in textbooks or apps, and we think, the more words I know, the better. But the reality is that you don't need to know thousands of words in order to be understood or to communicate effectively in English. In fact, the most useful words are the ones you'll use regularly. The trick is not to overload yourself with a massive list of random words, but to focus on learning words in context. When you learn words that are related to your life, your interests, or your daily activities, they'll stick much better. For example, instead of memorizing a list of 50 random verbs, try learning 5 verbs that are relevant to what you're doing today. Things like make, clean, or talk. Or if you're interested in traveling, focus on words and phrases related to travel. This way, the words you're learning are more useful, and they'll come up more often in your speaking and writing. Plus, when you learn words in context, you naturally learn how they are used in sentences, which helps with understanding how to use them correctly. And here's another important thing to remember. Practice is key. Just learning a word isn't enough. You need to practice using it regularly so that it becomes part of your active vocabulary. You can try creating sentences with new words, saying them out loud, or even writing short stories or diary entries. The more you practice with them, the easier it becomes to recall them when you need them in real conversations. And when you focus on learning words in context, you don't just memorize them, you internalize them. Over time, you'll be able to use them naturally, and they'll feel like a part of your vocabulary instead of just words you've crammed into your memory. So instead of overloading yourself with vocabulary lists, focus on learning a small number of words that are relevant to your life and practice using them every day in sentences. You'll find that not only does this approach make learning vocabulary more effective, but it also makes it a lot more enjoyable and meaningful. Now, on to mistake number 5, ignoring pronunciation. This is one that I think a lot of learners overlook, especially at the beginner level. When people start learning English, they often focus more on grammar, vocabulary, or reading comprehension, and they don't give enough attention to pronunciation. But here's the thing. Good pronunciation is key to being understood and building confidence. If you can't pronounce words clearly, even if you have a large vocabulary and a strong understanding of grammar, you might still struggle to communicate effectively. Imagine having a conversation with someone who doesn't pronounce words well. Even if you know the words they're using, you might find it hard to understand what they're saying. On the other hand, when you have good pronunciation, Your words come across clearly, and people can understand you right away, even if you're still learning the language. Good pronunciation doesn't mean you have to sound like a native speaker. It just means being clear and intelligible. And the good news is that pronunciation is something you can work on from day one, just like any other skill.
Exactly, Adam. And I think one of the biggest reasons learners neglect pronunciation is that they're often too focused on grammar or vocabulary. They think that if they get the sentence structure right and use the right words, that's enough. But pronunciation plays a huge role in communication. When you can pronounce words correctly, it makes the conversation flow more smoothly, and it shows that you're confident in your ability to communicate. Confidence in pronunciation makes a huge difference, especially when you're speaking to others. It helps you feel more at ease because you're not constantly worried about whether they can understand you. And I can't stress this enough. Pronunciation can be improved with consistent practice. It's just like learning any other part of the language. So, what can you do to improve your pronunciation? There are plenty of resources available to help you. For starters, I recommend using language learning apps that focus specifically on pronunciation. Apps like Ielts Speak or Pronuncian are great for helping you practice the sounds of English and get immediate feedback. You can also listen to native speakers, whether it's through movies, podcasts, YouTube videos, or language exchange platforms, and pay attention to how they pronounce words. I always tell my students to listen carefully to how native speakers pronounce certain words and then repeat them. I know it can feel awkward at first, but don't be afraid to practice speaking out loud. Mimicking native speakers is one of the best ways to improve your pronunciation.
Absolutely, Julia. And here's another tip. Record yourself speaking. This might sound strange at first, but trust me, it works. When you listen to recordings of yourself speaking, you can hear where your pronunciation needs improvement, and you'll be able to track your progress over time. It's a great way to identify problem areas and work on them systematically. You can also compare your pronunciation with that of native speakers and adjust accordingly. And don't forget about the importance of intonation and stress. In English, how you say something can be just as important as what you say. For example, the way you stress certain words in a sentence can change its meaning. So it's not just about pronouncing words clearly, it's also about getting the rhythm of the language right. By focusing on pronunciation from the beginning, you'll set yourself up for better communication and greater confidence.
Exactly, Adam. So, whether you're practicing on your own, using apps, or listening to native speakers, make sure to prioritize pronunciation. It's an important part of your learning journey, and the more attention you give it, the better your communication will be. Remember, pronunciation is not about sounding perfect. It's about being clear and confident. So don't hesitate to practice, make mistakes, and keep improving. Over time, it'll become second nature, and you'll feel more comfortable speaking English in any situation.
Great points, Julia. So, to wrap it up, good pronunciation helps you communicate clearly, feel confident, and be understood. Make sure you're practicing it from day one and don't neglect it as you move forward in your language learning journey. Now, let's move on to mistake number 6, which ties into a topic we've already touched on, focusing too much on perfection.
All right, let's dive into mistake number 6, using only one learning resource. This is another common pitfall that many learners fall into, especially in today's digital age, where we have so many resources at our fingertips. You might find a textbook, an app, or a YouTube channel that you really like, and then you end up using that one resource over and over again. And while it's great to have a preferred method or tool for learning, sticking to just one resource can actually limit your progress. Why? Because each resource offers a different approach to language learning, and by only using one, you miss out on a variety of perspectives and techniques that could help you learn faster and more effectively. Learning a language is complex, and the more varied your learning resources are, the more you'll be exposed to different types of vocabulary, accents, pronunciation, grammar usage, and real-life contexts. Variety is the spice of language learning, and it's what keeps things fresh and engaging. Imagine you're trying to learn English just by reading a grammar book. While that's helpful for understanding the structure of the language, it won't give you the opportunity to hear how native speakers use the language in daily conversation. You need exposure to different types of content, whether that's podcasts, videos, books, apps, or even conversations with real people. By mixing things up, you'll gain a deeper, more comprehensive understanding of the language.
Exactly, Julia. I couldn't agree more. When you use only one resource, you're limiting your learning experience. For example, textbooks are great for understanding the rules of the language, but they often don't reflect how English is actually spoken in real life. On the other hand, listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos gives you insight into how native speakers pronounce words, use slang, and express themselves in natural, everyday situations. Similarly, apps can help with vocabulary and grammar exercises, but they don't necessarily give you a well-rounded approach. They might focus on specific areas, but they often lack the context and deeper understanding that books, podcasts, or conversations provide. To truly master English, you need a well-rounded mix of resources that help you build all aspects of your language skills: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And let's not forget about how different resources appeal to different learning styles. Some people are visual learners, and they might benefit from watching videos or reading texts. Others might be more auditory learners and prefer listening to podcasts or songs. Some learners are kinesthetic, meaning they learn best by doing. So practicing with language exchange partners or using language apps that allow them to actively engage with the material is crucial. If you only use one resource, you're only catering to one learning style. But by using a variety of resources, you're giving yourself a chance to engage with the language in different ways, which helps reinforce your learning and keeps things exciting.
Exactly, Adam. That's such a great point. The key is to find a balance between all these resources. So let's break it down a little bit. First, you should definitely listen to podcasts. Podcasts are an amazing resource because they expose you to real conversations and a range of topics that can improve your listening skills. As you hear people speak naturally, you'll get a sense of how the language flows and how native speakers use contractions, phrasal verbs, and expressions. Plus, you can listen to podcasts anytime, anywhere, which makes them really convenient. You can start with podcasts made for English learners, which usually have slow, clear speech and easy-to-follow conversations. Once you're comfortable with those, you can challenge yourself with more advanced podcasts that feature native speakers discussing more complex topics. Videos are another great resource. They not only help with listening, but they also give you the visual element, which is super important. Whether you're watching YouTube videos or films, you can pick up on body language, facial expressions, and other nonverbal cues that will help you understand the meaning behind the words. You can also rewind and watch a video as many times as you need, which helps reinforce what you've learned. And if you're interested in improving your pronunciation, watching videos or movies with subtitles is a fantastic way to connect the spoken word to the written word, so you can see how words are spelled and pronounced. Books are another essential resource. I know that books can feel a little more formal or academic, but they're perfect for building your vocabulary, understanding grammar rules, and learning how to structure sentences correctly. Reading books also exposes you to more advanced vocabulary and formal language that you might not hear in everyday conversations. Plus, reading can help improve your writing skills too. Whether you're reading fiction or non-fiction, books give you a chance to see the language used in different contexts, which helps you understand the nuances of meaning and tone. If you're a beginner, start with easy-level books or graded readers, and as you get more comfortable, gradually work your way up to more challenging material.
And let's not forget apps, which are really useful for drilling vocabulary, grammar, and even pronunciation. They're a great tool to help you practice on the go, and many of them provide interactive exercises that make learning fun. Apps are especially helpful for beginners because they often break down lessons into bite-sized chunks that are easy to digest. Some of my favorites for beginners are Duolingo, Memrise, and Babbel. These apps are good for practicing and reinforcing what you've learned from other resources, but I wouldn't rely solely on them. Apps are great for daily practice, but they don't offer the full immersion experience that other resources like podcasts, videos, and books do. So, to sum up, variety is key to successful language learning. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Mix up your resources and engage with English in different ways, listening to podcasts, watching videos, reading books, and using apps to practice. Each resource has its own strengths, and when you combine them, you create a much richer learning experience. This variety will keep you motivated and engaged, and it will help you develop a deeper understanding of English. So, to all the beginners out there, try to incorporate different types of resources into your daily routine. The more you expose yourself to English in different formats, the quicker you'll improve.
Absolutely, Adam. And don't forget that learning English is a journey, and the more you immerse yourself in the language, the faster you'll progress. So go ahead and explore podcasts, videos, books, apps, and more. Find what works best for you. And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to language learning. Experiment with different resources and enjoy the process.
All right, let's move on to mistake number 7, not setting clear goals. This one is huge. I can't tell you how many learners come to me saying, I want to learn English, but they don't have a clear plan or specific goals in mind. The problem with this is that learning a language is a long-term commitment, and without a clear sense of direction, you're just wandering aimlessly. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the vastness of the language. English is a complex language with so many rules, exceptions, vocabulary, and nuances. If you don't break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces, it's easy to get lost or discouraged. Learning without a plan is like trying to reach a destination without knowing the road to take. You'll end up driving in circles, making little to no progress, and feeling frustrated. That's why setting clear, specific goals is one of the most important things you can do when learning English.
Absolutely, Adam. That's such a great analogy. Without clear goals, it's hard to stay motivated and measure progress. But setting goals doesn't mean you have to aim for perfection or make huge, unrealistic objectives. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes I see beginners make is setting goals that are too big or too vague. For example, someone might say, I want to be fluent in English. While that's a great aspiration, it's far too general and not something you can easily measure or achieve in the short term. Without breaking it down into smaller, achievable steps, this goal can feel unattainable, and you might give up along the way. So, what does a clear, actionable goal look like? Well, let's start by making sure your goals are specific, measurable, and time-bound. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent in English, try setting goals like, I want to learn 20 new words by the end of the week, or I will practice speaking English for 15 minutes every day this month. These are specific, realistic, and give you a clear direction on what to focus on. Exactly. And it's important to be realistic about your goals. If you're a beginner, don't expect to master advanced grammar in just a few weeks. Start with achievable goals that fit your current level. For instance, you could set a goal like, I will learn 5 new words each day for the next 2 weeks. Or, I will watch 1 English language video every day to improve my listening skills. These goals are small enough to be manageable, but they also add up over time to give you tangible progress. The key is consistency and making sure that your goals challenge you without overwhelming you. It's better to aim for something that's within reach and feel the sense of accomplishment once you achieve it, rather than set an impossible goal and feel frustrated when you can't meet it. As you achieve these smaller goals, you can gradually set bigger and more complex ones.
Right. And there's another important aspect to setting clear goals: tracking your progress. When you don't have a clear goal, it's hard to see how far you've come. But when you set specific goals and track your progress, it's incredibly rewarding. Let's say you set a goal to learn 5 new words every day for a week. At the end of the week, you'll have learned 35 words, which is a tangible result. You can look back and say, wow, I've really made progress this week. This kind of tracking helps keep you motivated, and it reminds you that learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. The more progress you can see, the more you'll want to continue learning. Another great way to track progress is through journaling or reflecting on what you've learned. At the end of each week, take a few minutes to write down the goals you accomplished and what you found challenging. Reflecting on your progress not only helps you stay on track, but also helps you identify areas where you might need more focus. For instance, if you're struggling with pronunciation, you can set a goal to dedicate more time to listening and speaking practice the following week. This kind of reflection allows you to adjust your goals as needed and keeps you on the path toward improvement.
And don't forget about breaking your goals into smaller chunks. For example, let's say your overall goal is to have a 15-minute conversation in English by the end of the month. That's a great goal, but it might feel overwhelming at first. So, break it down. You could start with smaller, more manageable goals like learn 5 common phrases for greetings or practice asking questions in English for the first week. Then, in the second week, you could practice giving short answers or talking about your hobbies. By the time the month is over, you'll have built the confidence and skills to have that 15-minute conversation. It's like building a house. If you try to build the whole thing at once, it's too much. But if you break it down into small tasks, the house comes together piece by piece. It's also important to stay flexible. Life happens, and sometimes things don't go as planned. Maybe you set a goal to study every day, but you missed a few days. Don't be too hard on yourself. Instead of giving up entirely, just adjust your goal to be more realistic for the next week. You can say, I'll study 3 times this week instead of 5. Or, if you missed a goal, you can simply move it to the next week. Flexibility is key. The goal isn't to be perfect, but to keep moving forward, step by step.
Great advice, Julia. The important thing is that you have a goal in mind, so that even when you face challenges, you know what you're working toward. When you don't have clear goals, it's easy to get distracted by other things or lose motivation. But when you have a roadmap, you can keep yourself focused and on track. And let's not forget, goals don't just need to be about grammar or vocabulary. They can also be about practicing speaking, improving your listening, or even setting a goal to watch a movie in English without subtitles. Goals can be as specific or as broad as you want, but the key is to make them personal and relevant to you, and to keep them achievable. So, to sum up, having clear goals helps you stay motivated, organized, and focused on what you need to improve. Without goals, you're just floating along, not knowing where to go. With goals, you have a clear path and the satisfaction of seeing your progress. For beginners, it's best to start small. Focus on learning new vocabulary, practicing speaking for a few minutes every day, or watching a short video in English. As you achieve those smaller goals, you'll naturally start to build toward bigger ones. And don't forget to track your progress and adjust your goals as needed. It's all about creating a learning plan that works for you and gives you direction as you move forward in your English learning journey.
Exactly, Adam. So don't let yourself get lost in the sea of language learning without a map. Set clear, realistic goals and take it one step at a time. Your progress will be much more rewarding and you'll stay motivated all along the way. All right, moving on to mistake number 8. Comparing yourself to others. Now, this is a big one, especially for beginners. It's so tempting to look at other learners, maybe your classmates, online friends, or even people you follow on social media, and feel like you're falling behind. You might see someone else speaking English fluently, using advanced vocabulary, or understanding complicated grammar rules, and think, wow, why am I not there yet? It's easy to fall into that trap of comparison, but I want to remind everyone listening today, everyone has their own journey. Language learning is a personal experience, and comparing your progress to someone else's can actually hold you back. First of all, the person you're comparing yourself to may have been learning English for much longer than you. They may have had different opportunities or experiences that allowed them to progress faster. You don't know their whole story, so comparing yourself to them isn't a fair or productive approach. And let's talk about social media for a second. Social media can make the comparison game even more dangerous. You see posts of people traveling the world, speaking English with ease, or making huge language learning breakthroughs, and it's easy to feel like you're not doing enough. But what you have to keep in mind is that social media is often a highlight reel. People post the best moments, the polished outcomes, the achievements, and not the behind-the-scenes struggles. You're seeing the end product, but you're not seeing the countless hours of practice, the mistakes, or the frustrations that led to that moment of success. When you compare yourself to others based on what you see on social media, you're not comparing like for like. You're comparing your current journey to someone else's completed journey, and that's not fair to you at all.
Exactly, Julia. This is such an important point. The truth is, everyone learns at their own pace. Some people might pick up grammar rules quickly, while others may need more time to grasp the same concept. Some learners might be naturally good at speaking and feel comfortable using new words in conversations, while others might find it more difficult to speak and prefer to work on reading or listening first. The thing is, there's no right or wrong pace, and there's no one correct way to learn. What's important is that you're making progress, no matter how fast or slow it may seem. Just because someone else is further along doesn't mean you're behind. Everyone faces different challenges, and the key is to focus on your progress, not someone else's speed. Take pride in the small victories, whether that's learning 5 new words, understanding a conversation you couldn't follow before, or having the confidence to speak English for a few minutes. Each of those small wins adds up, and eventually, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. It's all about celebrating your journey and not getting caught up in comparisons. Sometimes we think we're falling behind because we're not learning as quickly as others, but that's simply not true. There's no race here. Learning a language is about consistency, patience, and making steady progress. You don't need to be the fastest learner, and you don't need to match anyone else's pace. The only person you need to compare yourself to is yourself from yesterday. Are you better today than you were yesterday? That's the only measure that matters.
Exactly. It's all about measuring your progress against your own past self. Think about it this way. If you're a beginner, you might feel frustrated when you see someone else using complex vocabulary or speaking fluently. But remember, you weren't at their level yesterday. You might be amazed by how much you've improved over time. So, instead of looking at others and thinking you should be where they are, try reflecting on where you started and how far you've come. Maybe just last month you could barely hold a conversation in English, and now you can introduce yourself confidently or understand most of a short video. That's progress. And that's what counts. And let's not forget that making mistakes is part of the journey. When you compare yourself to someone else who seems to have it all together, you might start to feel like you shouldn't make mistakes or that you're doing something wrong if you stumble over words. But here's the truth. Mistakes are a natural and necessary part of learning. Every fluent English speaker, every teacher, and every language learner has made mistakes along the way. In fact, mistakes are how we learn and grow. So if you're comparing yourself to someone else and worrying that you're not as perfect as they are, just remember, they've made mistakes too. And it's totally normal to make them, no matter where you are on your journey.
Exactly, Julia. And don't forget that comparing yourself to others can actually undermine your confidence. If you're always measuring your progress against someone else's achievements, you might start to feel inadequate or discouraged. You might start thinking, "I'll never catch up," or "I'm not good enough." And that's a terrible mindset for learning. Instead, try to focus on what you can control: your own effort, consistency, and determination. Celebrate the small steps you've taken and acknowledge your own growth. Over time, you'll start to notice that your own progress accelerates, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else. Your confidence will grow, and so will your language skills.
That's such a great point, Adam. And let's be real, language learning isn't a competition. We're all in this together. Everyone has their own pace, their own strengths and weaknesses, and their own path. You're not in a race with anyone else. Instead, focus on the joy of learning and improving. Embrace the challenges and appreciate the journey. Learning a language is not about reaching the finish line first. It's about the process of getting better every day, step by step. So, let go of the comparison game and start appreciating your unique path and progress.
Exactly, Julia. So, to sum up, comparing yourself to others only leads to frustration, self-doubt, and unnecessary pressure. Remember, everyone learns at their own pace, and there's no need to rush. The important thing is to focus on your own progress and enjoy the journey. When you stop comparing and start celebrating your own improvements, you'll find the process of learning much more enjoyable and fulfilling. Now let's move on to our next common mistake, not getting enough practice. Now let's dive into mistake number 9, ignoring listening practice. This is something I see a lot of beginners struggle with. Many students focus so much on speaking and grammar that they forget one of the most essential skills when learning any language: listening. But listening is incredibly important. In fact, it plays a massive role in improving all of your other skills. The more you listen to English, the better your understanding of the language becomes, and the easier it will be to speak, write, and even read. It's all connected. Think about it. When you're learning a language, you're essentially training your brain to understand patterns, rhythms, and the natural flow of speech. Listening helps you pick up on things like word stress, intonation, and even slang or idiomatic expressions, which you might not necessarily get from a textbook or grammar book. When you listen to English regularly, you're not only getting exposed to new vocabulary, but you're also training your ear to recognize these words in real conversations. You'll start to understand how words blend together, how sentences are structured in everyday speech, and how pronunciation can change in different contexts. Imagine learning a new word from a dictionary, but you never hear it in conversation. It might be hard for you to use it correctly because you haven't heard it spoken naturally, with the right intonation or rhythm. But when you listen to English regularly, you get a feel for how words sound in context, and this makes it much easier for you to use them in your own speaking and writing. It's like learning how to play an instrument. You wouldn't just read about playing the guitar. You need to listen to music, practice, and get familiar with the sound before you can play it yourself. The same goes for language learning.
Exactly, Adam. Listening is like the foundation of a house. It supports everything else. And for beginners, it can sometimes be hard to find the right listening material. But the great thing is, there's so much content out there that's perfect for learners at all levels, and you don't have to start with difficult podcasts or fast-paced movies. For beginners, I recommend starting with slow, clear podcasts or audiobooks that are designed specifically for English learners. There are plenty of great resources that feature simplified conversations, and they often include transcripts, so you can follow along. This will help you train your ear and get used to hearing English without overwhelming yourself with complicated vocabulary or fast speech. Another great way to practice listening is by watching movies or TV shows in English with subtitles. I know that might seem a bit daunting at first, but the subtitles can actually help you make connections between spoken words and written words. Start by watching your favorite shows, but turn on the English subtitles. This way, you can listen to how native speakers talk, and you can read along to better understand what they're saying. And as you get more comfortable, you can try watching without subtitles, or with just English subtitles, which will really help your listening skills. Movies and TV shows are fantastic for picking up natural phrases and expressions too, and they give you a glimpse of how the language is used in real-life situations, which you just can't get from a textbook. Let's not forget about audiobooks too. Audiobooks are an excellent way to practice listening while also expanding your vocabulary. You can listen to them while commuting, exercising, or even before bed. And with platforms like Audible, you can find books at a variety of levels, from beginner-friendly to advanced. Plus, many audiobooks are narrated by professional voice actors who enunciate clearly, which makes it easier for you to understand. And since audiobooks are available in many genres, you can pick something that interests you, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, or self-help. You'll not only improve your listening skills, but you'll also enjoy the process, which will keep you motivated.
Yes, and let's not forget about language learning podcasts, too. Podcasts are perfect because they're designed for language learners of all levels, and you can listen to them at your own pace. You can replay episodes as many times as you need, and the best part is that they're free. There are many podcasts out there that focus specifically on beginner English learners, and they cover a wide range of topics, from grammar tips to daily conversations to cultural insights. Listening to podcasts allows you to hear how English speakers express themselves in a natural, informal way. It's also a great way to practice active listening, where you're fully engaged and focused on understanding the message being communicated. And don't be afraid to replay certain parts of the podcast if you didn't quite catch everything. The more you listen, the more your brain will start to recognize patterns, and over time, your understanding of English will improve.
So in short, listening is key. It helps you with pronunciation, vocabulary acquisition, understanding native speakers, and even your own speaking ability. If you ignore it, you're missing out on a huge part of the learning process. Start small, be consistent, and listen to content that's appropriate for your level. The more you expose yourself to English, the easier it will become, and you'll start to see huge improvements in all of your language skills. So, don't neglect listening practice. It's one of the most important things you can do to become fluent in English. All right, here we are. Mistake number 10, giving up too soon. Now, I can totally understand why this happens. Language learning is tough. It's frustrating when you feel like you're putting in all this effort and not seeing results as quickly as you want. But I'm here to tell you that consistency is key. It's so easy to feel like giving up when you're not seeing immediate progress, but if you stick with it, even through the tough days, you'll start to see improvement over time. One of the most important things to keep in mind is that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. There are going to be ups and downs, and there will be days when you feel like you're not making progress. But that's perfectly normal. Every language learner goes through periods of doubt. The key is not to quit during these moments of frustration. Instead, focus on the small victories. Maybe today you learned 5 new words or understood a sentence you couldn't understand last week. Celebrate those wins no matter how small they seem. Those tiny steps are what add up to big progress over time.
That's such an important point, Julia. The small wins are what keep you going. Sometimes we get so focused on the bigger picture that we forget to celebrate the little milestones along the way. But those small, daily habits are what lead to long-term success. If you've been consistently practicing for a few months and haven't seen any massive changes, don't be discouraged. It's just that the improvements are happening in ways that you might not see at first. Your brain is still processing everything, and eventually, things will start to click into place. Consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to practice a little bit every day than to burn out by studying for hours in one go and then giving up for weeks. Another tip I always give is to create a routine that works for you. Stick to small, daily habits and keep it simple. For example, spend 10 to 15 minutes each day learning vocabulary, listening to a podcast, or practicing speaking. You don't have to dedicate hours every day. Just a few minutes of consistent practice can lead to incredible progress over time. It's better to study for 15 minutes every day than to study for 2 hours one day and then not study again for a week. These small habits add up, and you'll see results as long as you stay consistent.
And don't forget to give yourself grace during the process. There's no need to be perfect. You'll have good days and bad days, but as long as you keep showing up, you're making progress. Celebrate your efforts and remember that language learning is a journey. Don't judge your success by how fast you learn. Judge it by how much effort you put in and how much you enjoy the process. Consistency, patience, and persistence are what will get you to the finish line. And in the end, you'll be so proud of how far you've come.
Exactly. Stick with it, and you'll get there. Don't let frustration or setbacks convince you to quit. The path to fluency is a gradual one, but every bit of effort you put in counts. So, celebrate your progress, keep practicing, and remember that success comes with time and consistency. Now let's move on to our final mistake.
All right, let's take a moment to quickly recap the top 10 mistakes we've discussed today, so you can remember what to avoid as you continue on your English learning journey. Mistake number 1, focusing only on grammar. We talked about how important it is to balance grammar with other skills like speaking, listening, and writing. Mistake number 2, not speaking enough. Speaking from day one is crucial, and you can practice even if you don't have a partner. Talk to yourself or use language exchange platforms. Mistake number 3, fear of making mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process, so embrace them as opportunities to improve and grow. Mistake number 4, overloading vocabulary. Instead of memorizing a long list of words, try learning them in context and practice regularly. Mistake number 5, ignoring pronunciation. Good pronunciation is essential for clear communication, so make sure to listen to native speakers and practice speaking out loud. Mistake number 6, using only one learning resource. Diversify your learning tools by using podcasts, books, apps, and videos to get a well-rounded experience. Mistake number 7, not setting clear goals. Set achievable and realistic goals for yourself, and make sure to track your progress. Mistake number 8, comparing yourself to others. Focus on your own journey and celebrate your personal progress. Mistake number 9, ignoring listening practice. Listening to English regularly is essential to improving your understanding and other language skills. And finally, mistake number 10, giving up too soon. Consistency is key, so don't let setbacks discourage you. Stay persistent and you'll see progress. Now that we've covered those common mistakes, let's get to the practical tips that will help you move forward and avoid these pitfalls. First, make a plan. Whether it's a weekly schedule or a goal-setting strategy, having a clear plan will keep you focused and motivated. Make sure to incorporate different language skills into your practice, such as speaking, listening, reading, and writing, so that you're developing all areas of your language ability. And don't forget to celebrate your progress, no matter how small it may seem. Every step forward is a success.
Another great tip is to find ways to stay motivated. It can be hard to stay motivated when you don't see immediate results, but remember that learning English is a long-term investment in yourself. Break down your bigger goals into smaller, manageable steps and celebrate each time you accomplish one of them. You can also reward yourself for sticking with your learning plan. Maybe after you complete a week of practice, you can treat yourself to something you enjoy. Also, keep in mind that motivation can ebb and flow, so on days when you feel unmotivated, just do a little bit. Remember, consistency is more important than intensity. Speaking of motivation, remember that learning English is a journey, not a race. Don't put pressure on yourself to learn everything overnight. Language learning is not about perfection, it's about progress. Every day that you practice is a step closer to fluency, even if it doesn't feel that way at first. The more you practice, the more natural the language will become to you. But don't rush the process. Take your time and enjoy the ride.
That's right, Adam. And here's another piece of advice. Don't be too hard on yourself when things get tough. Learning a language is challenging, and there will be days when you feel stuck, frustrated, or like you're not getting anywhere. But remember, every learner goes through this. It's completely normal to feel that way. The important thing is not to give up when those feelings arise. Push through those moments, even if it's just a little bit of practice each day, and you'll start to see that the difficult days are just part of the process. You will have breakthroughs, and when they happen, they'll feel even more rewarding because you know you've earned them. And don't forget, there's no perfect way to learn a language. It's all about finding what works best for you and your lifestyle. Maybe you learn best by listening to podcasts, or maybe you prefer reading books. Maybe you love practicing with a language partner, or maybe you like working through apps on your own. The point is, make language learning fun and personal. When you enjoy the process, the progress will come naturally.
Exactly. And speaking of enjoying the process, remember that it's okay to have fun with your learning. If you find that you're getting stressed or frustrated, it might be time to change things up. Try listening to a funny podcast, watching a movie in English, or learning some new slang. When you make language learning enjoyable, it becomes a part of your daily life rather than a chore. So, keep things fresh, be flexible, and remember why you started learning in the first place. Whether it's for travel, career, or personal growth, your reasons for learning will keep you going when the going gets tough. And most importantly, keep going. No matter where you are in your English learning journey, remember that you've got this. It might feel overwhelming at times, but every bit of practice is helping you improve. You are stronger and more capable than you might think, and all your hard work will pay off in the end. So, don't quit now, even if you're not where you want to be yet. Just keep going. The road to fluency isn't always easy, but it's definitely worth it. You'll reach your goals if you stay consistent, and you'll be amazed at how far you've come.
You've got this, and we believe in you. Keep practicing, stay motivated, and remember that every mistake is just another step towards becoming fluent in English. So, take a deep breath, keep moving forward, and enjoy the journey ahead. We're here cheering you on, every step of the way.
Exactly, Julia. You can do it. And as always, we're so happy to have you with us on the English Globe podcast. Stay positive, stay consistent, and we'll be back with more tips and encouragement next time. Take care and keep learning.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the English Globe podcast. We truly appreciate you spending your time with us as we explore the top 10 mistakes to avoid when learning English in 2025. Whether you're a beginner or looking for a fresh perspective on your learning journey, we hope today's episode has given you valuable insights and encouragement. Language learning can be challenging, but you are not alone on this journey. We're here to support you every step of the way. Remember, you're making progress even on the days when it feels tough. Just keep going, and most importantly, enjoy the process. It's been such a pleasure sharing these tips with you today. We hope that by avoiding some of these common mistakes, you can speed up your learning and start seeing better results in your English practice. Don't forget, language learning is a personal journey, and it's okay to go at your own pace. Every learner is different, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Find what works for you, stay consistent, and never stop believing in your potential. And of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.
Yes, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's always great to connect with fellow learners and share tips and strategies. We hope that you're feeling motivated and ready to tackle your English learning with renewed energy. Remember, every step you take brings you closer to your goals, no matter how small it may seem at the time. Keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you grow. And as always, we're here to help guide you along the way, so be sure to stay tuned for more episodes packed with valuable advice. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. By subscribing, you'll get instant access to all our future episodes, so you'll never miss an update. And if you're enjoying the content, please feel free to share it with your friends, family, or anyone who might benefit from our tips. The more learners we can reach, the better. We're passionate about helping people like you become fluent in English, and we're so glad to have you as part of our community. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The English Globe, where we post even more tips, lessons, and stories to help you learn English in a fun and engaging way. There's a lot of great content waiting for you over there, including videos that break down tricky grammar points, tips for speaking confidently, and even real-world stories to help you improve your listening skills. So, if you want to dive deeper into your English learning journey, be sure to visit us there.
Absolutely. And we want to hear from you. If you've ever made a mistake while learning English, We'd love to know about it. And more importantly, how you overcame it. Let's share our experiences and support each other as a community. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. What's one mistake you've made in learning English, and how did you tackle it? We all learn from one another, and your story might just inspire someone else to keep going, even when it feels tough. So, head over to the comments section and share your experiences with us. We look forward to reading your stories and engaging with you. Let's continue to grow together, one step at a time.
And remember, we're here to help you succeed. Stay positive, stay motivated, and most importantly, stay committed to your English learning journey. We know you can do it, and we're cheering you on every step of the way. Thank you again for joining us today, and we can't wait to have you back for our next episode. Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and we'll see you next time on the English Globe podcast.
Take care, everyone, and best of luck with your English learning. Remember, you've got this.